Hello, everyone, and welcome to this BEUC webinar, Consumer Debate on Rail, where we will address the main challenges for rail in the next 5 years, with the new commission stepping in, a new parliament as well. I'm happy to be your host for today's webinar. I'm Robin Loos. I'm the Senior Sustainable Transport Officer for BEUC. I will be joined by a series of colleagues and stakeholders, policymakers from the European Commission, from the Parliament, to discuss today's event. A few housekeeping rules before we start. You can use the chat button to ask questions or to discuss among yourselves. Please do not hesitate to flag these questions for the Q&A at the end of this event, and please do mention who you are talking for. You can, of course, quote one of these big noise that you will hear today using the hashtag consumer debate. Of course, keep your questions short and sharp, and I hope this will be a very interesting event for you. We have a good title for the event and for the report that we are presenting today, Railway to Consumer Heaven. Let's hope we bring you some good insight of what we believe the next 5 years could be in terms of railway policy in the EU. I'm happy to present and to give the floor to Agustín Reyna, who is BEUC's Director General, who will give you the introduction to this event and present the why, the how, and what do we expect for the next 5 years. Agustín, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Robin, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to this consumer debate, where we hope we can sketch out our path, or rather our railway to consumer heaven for the new European Commission. We know from our surveys that consumers are willing to act and move sustainably. And if you are participating in today's event, you surely are convinced of the benefits of rail. But you probably also have too many discussions with your friends and family about the convenience of rail, the delays that commuters experience here in Belgium, and certainly unfortunately as well, but also across Europe. You might also have spent hours on your computer trying to find the best possible route at the best possible price to travel from Paris to Madrid, from Vienna to Berlin. And the reality is that you might sometimes have given up and took the plane instead. Here at BEUC and with our members, we wanted to give these feelings of love and hate a reality check. And that is why I'm excited to share with you the key findings and recommendations from our latest report, Railway to Consumer Heaven. This report is the result of a shared effort by 12 BEUC members across 11 European countries. We analyze national and cross-border routes and review services like high-speed, regional, and even night trains. We examine key factors such as frequency, ticketing, pricing, passenger rights, and accessibility. And we didn't just stop at the numbers. We looked at the real consumer experiences. This gave us a rich qualitative picture of what is working, and most importantly, what isn't. From the great examples and experiences of the Rome-Milan high-speed route to the lacking connections between Portugal and Spain, from the well-connected Budapest to the quite expensive Danish rail system, we bring concrete examples to the table. Our recommendations to national and European policymakers therefore address what consumers really want. They want better timetables, higher reliability, more comfort, competitive pricing, and a seamless cross-border journey. All of these recommendations are presented as part of a plan, EU Masterplan for rail, that could make train travel the go-to choice for millions of Europeans. And it seems that President von der Leyen took up the first policy measure of our Masterplan when announcing in her political guidelines a single digital booking and ticketing regulation. This could allow Europeans to buy a ticket on one single platform and get passengers' rights from their whole trip. This EU initiative has the potential to become a flagship for the next European Commission. We have, of course, many more recommendations to share, from fair competition to financing of rolling stock, from improved timetable coordination to a stronger role for the European Railway Agency. And of course, as you all know, the question of investment, which often revolves around building new tracks for high-speed connections. We at BEUC are strong supporters of increasing the financing of rail in Europe, but our experience on the ground shows that so much can be done already now and not in 25 years to make rail more convenient for consumers, for all of us. Our recommendations are designed to put consumers at the heart of rail policies, ensuring that the system becomes more convenient, affordable, and sustainable. So we are truly convinced that together we can turn EU's rail network into a true consumer heaven. And now I would like to pass the floor back to you, Robin, who will present the recommendations of our master plan for rail in greater detail. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Agustín. Thanks a lot. So what we did in this report with 12 members, 11 countries, is looked, of course, at what Agustín just presented. And I will go through a bit of the details of the main findings, and of course, what we expect to solve these issues. The first point is on the frequency of rail services. There are some really good high-speed connections in some countries, while in some others, well, basic regional services are even infrequent. You mentioned the Rome-Milan route, very effective, very efficient. Well, you could also mention the Cologne-Düsseldorf, 61 trains per day to meet between these two cities. On the other hand, in Greece, the country of our new, or potentially new Commissioner for Transport, the Athens-Thessaloniki route, which is one of the busiest in Europe, has only 6 train connections per day, less than plane connections per day. So of course, there's something to be done there. We mentioned ticketing. Ticketing and booking processes are still way too complex for people. You have some good examples in Denmark with an integrated travel, not only for rail, but also for bus and trams here in cities. But you also have problems and issues which can be easily solved. We're going to hear today from Portugal and Spain, and the connection there sometimes is clearly deficient. If you look at the Celta train, the Porto to Vigo train, well, the Spanish operator, Renfe, is the only one who can sell you this ticket. Well, if you go on the Portuguese rail operators, he cannot sell you this ticket, which is a bit odd when you think about it. Passenger rights, one of the key issues and one of the key elements of BEUC action over the years. Basic consumer rights and passenger rights are sometimes not enforced, complex to apply for, and when you encounter a delayed or canceled train, you're sometimes left alone. Rotterdam, Amsterdam, for example, very great example of how concrete actions can help consumers. If this train from Rotterdam to Amsterdam is delayed from 15 minutes, you can already apply for compensation. Well, to the extent that this train has only been on time 50% of the time last year. But still, a great example of how you can make life easy for claims to be active. On the other hand, in some connections, international connections in Germany, well, the announcements are sometimes only made in English, which can be quite disturbing for those who don't speak the language. We looked at one of the key elements for consumers, convenience, accessibility. Here again, it varies greatly. If you look now in Germany again, the ICE trains are well comfortable, large seats, family areas for people to take care of their kids during their travel. If you compare to the Italian situation, where regional trains, at least, are sometimes overcrowded, old and unreliable, you see a completely different pictures for Europeans. We also looked, of course, at cross-border rail services with some good examples, if you look between Germany and Netherlands, but also the bad ones that I already mentioned in Portugal and Spain. We're going to hear today also from night train services, which had the spotlight for a few years during the pandemic. Well, we know that night trains was the way to travel across Europe 20, 25 years ago. It is now not the case anymore. But still, you could have some night train services replacing short-haul flights. Budapest, very well-connected city in terms of night train connections. While on the other hand, on the southern part of Europe, these night train connections simply don't exist anymore, have been cancelled after the pandemic. You have strong reliability issues, which is not a major pain for consumers. Here, our members in Greece mentioned the numerous delayed, the outdated trains, which of course diminish the appeal for rail travel. There are lots of issues that have been explained and presented in the report, which I invite you to read thoroughly to find all the examples. But I would like to focus now on what can be done. What are the recommendations to fix these issues? What could be done at national level and also at EU level? We have the quick fixes, of course. We have simpler ticketing and booking process for cross-border rail options. Very important measure that could really help make rail travel easier, at least on a cross-border basis. You have, of course, effective cross-border passenger rights. The current discussions on multimodal passenger rights are clearly not enough. We need these passenger rights to be effective, to be enforceable. And at the moment, what we have is too many national exemptions, too many problems whenever you combine a trip with different trains. This has to stop. And there's a possibility under the announcement of President von der Leyen to also make these passenger rights better. This also means that the platforms who are going to sell you these tickets need to be regulated, and their practices vis-à-vis consumers need to be controlled so that they also enforce passenger rights when they sell tickets from railway operators. Fair competition is a topic of the day. There has been a recent report by DG Move, which publishes a very interesting study on the benefits of competition for consumers. We at BEUC are very in favor of the conclusions of this report, yet it still highlights the high-speed rail network more than the regional and the daily trains of consumers, where there again, there's much more that can be done. Public service obligations, when open to different competitors, can really help if we don't look only at the price, but also at the quality of the service, and to a certain extent, at the quality of the workers for these railway operators. But there are ways to promote healthy competition between actors. And for a quick fix could be a better coordination of cross-border timetables. There are many obligations for railway operators and infrastructure managers to inform the Commission and inform each other about the timetables. We know that from an experience, the enforcement of such obligations is clearly lacking. And yet we know that for example, the European Railway Agency could do much better in coordinating the timetables to allow for new entrants to jump into new markets, but also for the consumers to be aware of which train they can take well in advance. And of course, the new Commission has ambitions on rail. We have also new EU-wide passenger protection policy, which go beyond passenger rights, but ensure the right for consumers to find a train, find a connection, having automatic rebooking on the next available train, having passenger rights well enforced, of course. But why not developing comfort standards across the EU so that new rolling stock can be the same across the EU and the experience of train travel can really be strengthened. Talking about rolling stock, there are ways to finance new rolling stock, leasing rolling stock for these new railway operators. It is important for high speed, but it is also important, and we'll hear today, from the night train services perspective. The European Investment Bank could be a great actor to get some money for these new rolling stock, common financing of such rolling stock, and leasing offers that could really help new entrants when activating a market. The European Railway Agency, in our view, has a potential to be much stronger with more finance, more human resource behind it, to actually have the European Railway Agency act as a cop around the railway network across the EU. Let's imagine that the European Railway Agency becomes a Eurocontrol for rail. Integrating mobility offers around station is also an important element, because we don't stop only at the train station. We need integrated offers from leased cars to public transport connecting these stations. We know that the TEN-T network foresees development of sustainable urban mobility plans, and we need to push forward. And then the financing that Agustín already talked about, make more funds available to complete the TEN-T core network. We know the investment gap is clear. We know that the budget of Connecting Europe facility is not enough to complete the TEN-T core network. And with the new multi-annual financial framework coming from the Commission, a massive increase in public and private investment will be needed. And of course, all these will lead to the massive investment plan that we do hope for and that we share with railway operators. But we put it at last because we know, as Agustín said, that so much can be done already today with budget that is reasonable, controlled, and that would be the precondition for this massive investment plan. This was in a nutshell the recommendations and the findings we had. We hope that this EU Master Plan for Rail get inspiration. I now give the floor to Lucille Buisson, who's former French member UFC que choisir, and who will deep dive in some of the findings of their own report, notably on ticketing.
Hi, everyone. So you shared the, yeah, thank you. So yeah, I'm Lucille, I'm Transport Policy Officer at UFC que choisir, at the main consumer organization in France. And today I want to share with you the key findings from our recent studies on the railway system in France. First, as a consumer organization, we focus on daily mobility. So we did a study this year on the quality of service of regional train, because we believe that regional train can be a really good alternative to cars, but they need to be reliable. More and more people are using regional train in France, it's what we see, but the challenges really persist. 1 in 5 trains is cancelled or rescheduled, and delays in France for those regional trains is 11%. So it's much higher than, for example, in Austria or in Italy. So to improve this, we call for stricter contracts between the regions and the railway operator regarding service quality. And we also propose something that is really important for us because it's about rights. We ask for that the regular train user receive compensation for recurring disruptions, which is not the case in 3 regions today in France. Second, a few years ago, we went on the investment side. And what we see is that, and what we really think is that we really must prioritize maintenance for the nearly 50,000 kilometers of rail in France, because the past cuts in maintenance funding have led to ongoing infrastructure issues that cause nearly 20% of the delays today. So for this reason, we ask to strengthen the quality goals for SNCF Réseau, defined by the states. SNCF Réseau, which is the infrastructure manager in France, to improve the service quality we see, which is at the heart of our studies about rail, and especially on minor lines, which are 30% of the network and are really important for daily mobility again and to replace cars. And third, more recently, in the frame of the BEUC report, we really deep dive on ticket purchasing in France. We compare 24 routes on 7 booking platforms that are available in France. And what we found is that there are significant price differences between those platforms. There is also missing destination, missing information about the train that are operated. For example, SNCF Connect, which is the main booking platform in France, do not display the trains that are not operated by SNCF Voyageurs. This means that it's impossible to buy, mostly impossible to buy a train to another country, because effectively SNCF Voyageurs is not present everywhere in Europe. So we also see on those platforms hidden fees that only appears at the end of the booking process, something which is not clear, which is not good in terms of price transparency. We also tested on this platform the intermodality with public transport specifically, and we see that it's mostly inaccessible, except for the German example inside Germany, so with the node city ticket systems. And lastly, we really, and I think it's crucial for us, we see that the rights of passenger today are not compatible with European travels, but also with the opening of the train operation market. Because if a consumer take 2 trains and have a transfer between 2 different operators, the transfer is not guaranteed today. So that's really important for us. And so all to sum up, we see a problem on access to information about trains, on pricing, transparent pricing and fees, and minimum rights that are today crucial to keep trains attractive, especially in the European context compared to air travel. And for us, it's really essential, this last point, to make train a competitive option to travelers. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Lucille, to share your experience. That was extremely interesting to hear from the ground. So thank you also for your contribution to the overall efforts of BEUC in his report. And I have the pleasure to introduce the Director General of DG Move, Magda Kopczyńska, who is joining us today. Thank you so much, Magda, for taking the time. We would love to hear, your reactions to our report and what our colleagues from UFC Choisir have shared. So the floor is yours, and thank you very much again for joining us.
Thank you, Agustín. Thank you so much for inviting me here today. Of course, I couldn't have not joined a panel that is going to talk about rail heaven. Although I have to say, I was thinking, looking at listening to you, but also looking at some findings which you kindly shared with me and with my colleagues before the meeting today, that since I'm Director General responsible for transport and mobility in Europe, maybe I should ask for transport and mobility heaven more than just rail. But seriously now. A few comments from my side, a few comments on your report, but also then comments back on things that are coming. First, it's really a very thorough report, so I strongly recommend to everybody to have a good read of it. And I also really appreciate one of the main thoughts throughout the report. That while frequent calls for investment in rail are justified, and we heard that in few contexts, there is more to improving the quality of rail than only additional investment in infrastructure. And I think even more importantly, insufficient investment cannot be an excuse for inertia on so many aspects that the rail sector must work on and improve. So looking at the suggestions first that you came up with the report, you're calling on the Commission to establish an EU Masterplan on rail. And I would like to challenge you by saying that a blueprint for a more attractive, efficient, and affordable rail already exists. and we call it Single European Railway Area. It's a framework that should enable all stakeholders to deliver within their competencies: railway undertakings, infrastructure managers, competent authorities, regulatory bodies, and also the Commission together with the European Railway Agency. Our vision for the Single European Railway Area is actually not very distant from your rail heaven. True, and that you acknowledge as well, things are not there yet, things are not yet completed. And at the same time, I should rather say, we are doing quite a few things all the time as we speak. New legislation when needed, such as track capacity management or rail ticketing. I'll talk more about it later. But also implementation of the fourth railway package, where we try to push for market opening, and we push for we issue de facto EU-wide technical specifications that will allow efficient use of the still too scarce infrastructure capacity and smoother cross-border traffic. By the way, I really appreciate a strong focus on cross-border traffic in your report. And I think these are the things that we will not lose sight of and will continue working on. Market opening. Thank you so much for commenting on the report that was published 2-3 weeks ago, I think. What's important is that some improvements in service provision will not come from top-down requirements. Service quality and innovation mostly derive from the efforts of operators pushed to do so by competition, to match the offer of the rivals and better meet consumers' needs. Competition has worked time and again in other sectors, and it is delivering, and you gave examples of that as well. It is delivering results also in rail. Italy, Spain, Czechia, France, there are more frequent services. True, there can be more, but we actually can link those more frequent and better services directly to opening up competition, and more importantly, also the lower ticket prices. And this comparison that was shown from the point of view of France is actually very interesting and very telling. And we are talking here about competition not just for high speed. We are also talking competition for all type of rail connectivity. But then looking at things that Commission is doing or will be doing, which I like to think reflect very well quite a few of the recommendations that you have put forward. I think one important acknowledgement that I would like to make, where I fully agree with you, is that citizens have the right to sustainable and affordable public transport, including in remote areas. Using trains should therefore be easy and attractive and should offer true value for money. Rail services must be not only available though, but they also have to be reliable and punctual. And we all can tell stories. But since they not always are, indeed, passengers must be able to count on connections offered. They must be able to take care of their traveling in case something happens. People must be confident to reach their destinations, whether it's workplaces, schools, or holiday destinations. And if that doesn't happen, we need to have a solid framework for passenger rights. Everybody now seems to be very focused on this journey planning and booking and travel information. It's already happening. It needs to be done better. And for all rail services in Europe, and I stress for all, available travel options and fares must be shown to the traveler. We are working in that direction. We definitely will be pushing more. Digital ticketing should be mandated and could be supported by other sales options for people that do need alternatives. All digital ticketing tools should be based on harmonized European standards and interoperability for data sharing subject to EU law, and full digitalization of ticketing processes is therefore key to attract more passengers to use rail as their preferred mobility solution. This is what you've been asking for. This is what we have been working on. And the fact that in political guidelines of President von der Leyen, single digital booking and ticketing regulation is so much visible is a very clear indication that it is now recognized at all political levels as one of the priorities that I and my colleagues will be working on. This initiative should bring more transparency on available rail service offers. It needs to facilitate, once implemented, seamless digital access to ticket sales across borders, across operators, and this is a very important and, it has to come with reinforced passenger rights. I will not tell you now details of the timing, but please do rest assured that this is one of the key initiatives on which the work is already ongoing. I will maybe challenge just one statement that I heard in the opening part about, where was it? That there should be one single platform to sell the tickets. I would insist that there should be single platforms, but they all should work and function to the same standards, and they should be equally easy to use and open to everybody, for all passengers. I'm just not a big fan of putting everything in only one place where everybody should go, for different reasons, including, honestly, including the question of cybersecurity. We were talking, or you were talking about more services and improving the overall situation when it comes to long distance and cross-border passenger rail. We have the 2021 Commission Action Plan, several points of action identifying there. A lot of them, actually most of them, have already been delivered. And to name a few, revised TEN-T regulation, which does mandate enhanced railway infrastructure building where needed. And thank you for mentioning TEN-T in the summary of the report. The adoption of the proposal to modernize capacity allocation. Again, proposal is there. We hope to finalize it quickly. And it is indeed an attempt to try to do more with the infrastructure that we have now. Modernized technical specifications for networks, signaling and rolling stock to increase interoperability. It is something that should work more smoothly across the EU. We are getting there, but also the sheer scale of it takes a bit of time. You mentioned, actually talking about rolling stock, the question of availability. We have the Green Rail Investment Platform of the EIB. You mentioned EIB, and it's clearly recalled in your recommendations. That's already a good thing to have. There is also a Luxembourg protocol that has come into force, and it protects investments in mobile assets. We have the 2023 revision of technical specifications for interoperability for locomotives and passenger vehicles to simplify the design, construction, and authorization of go-everywhere passenger coaches. Indeed, this point of how differentiated the manufacturing and construction of rail cars and locomotives is a thing to reflect on. And of course, that didn't come very, very strongly in your presentation, but I really wouldn't like us to forget about ERTMS, the European Rail Traffic Management System. It is a super important element of the overall safety, because what we also want to make sure that happens is the question of rail transport remaining safe. It is a safe mode of transport, that this is something that requires constant attention. We plan to publish guidelines on track access charges in the coming months. We will not necessarily recommend a general lowering of track access charges, but correct application of this regulatory framework in such a way that it focuses better on the efficient use of the network rather than simply revenue collection. We recently published PSO guidelines, and we would like to make sure that the PSO regulation is applied correctly by member states. And it is a very important element to provide for rail services where they are not always easy to obtain, only relying on the market. We have also shown in the study that there are clear benefits of open procedures for PSO services, leading to higher frequencies, better service, newer rolling stock, or simply savings for public authorities. A lot has been said by all speakers at the beginning about investment. I think it is indeed true that investments need to be there if we want to see more movement or more modal shift to rail. But I think, as I said at the beginning, it's not only about just more money, it is also about what we do with the money we have and what we do with the system that we have before all the money comes. It will not come as a surprise that, of course, at this moment in time, I cannot comment on the next multi-annual financial framework that is being prepared in the Commission. The exact shape of that will be indeed put in place by the next College of Commissioners. But what is very clear, and that was also stated very openly by President von der Leyen, it needs to be a policy-based budget. It needs to be more focused to align with our priorities and objectives, and it needs to be targeted where EU action is most needed and in a flexible way. What is also important is that question of financing, of investment, needs to look both into public money available, but also in private investment. And thank you so much to BEUC for recognizing that as well. So trying to sum up, and apologies that it's taken me a moment, but again, your report is quite rich in things that I wanted to comment on. I think what we really need to make sure that passengers already using rail or those who want to switch to rail, that they feel that their needs are better accounted for. Well, we need to continue with implementing railway packages, including through proper market opening. But I think what is really changing slowly but surely is that the success of railway operators is no longer measured by the level of subsidy they manage to obtain, but really by how well they meet passengers' needs. And for that, it is really important to continue that discussion with BEUC, with your members, because I want to make sure that all those policies for at least for the next 5 years, this concept of rail heaven or transport heaven is really included in all our reflections to make sure that passengers, including rail passengers, but not only, really have a feeling that they are getting what we often call value for money. And the single European rail area, which I really will be now referring in my head to as rail heaven, is something that I do believe will allow all of us to see the results that your report is asking for. Thank you so much for having me here. I look forward to following the discussion for the next couple of minutes before I need to switch off. But I would like to assure everybody that my colleagues and I myself will be happy to be in touch with BEUC to continue discussing what it is that we all need to do to make sure that this rail heaven is becoming even more heavenly than it is now. Thank you so much again for having me here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Magda, for your reactions. It has been extremely interesting to hear you. And I think we can totally agree. There is not a single silver bullet. It's a combination of measures. We require a combination of effort by different players. A lot can be done already by the operators. The states and the European Union legislators will play an extremely important role to set the appropriate framework in place. But everything oriented, like you say, to make rail, a heavenly travel for consumers, knowing the importance that rail has in multimodality. And that is something that we can always, and we should always keep in mind, because consumers want to move more sustainably, and we need to give them the opportunity to do so, cross-border and as well as domestically. So thank you again so much for joining this panel or this first reaction. And now we can move actually to the panel, and I will give back the floor to Robin, because like we said before, we need everybody on board to make things happen. And I'm very pleased to see that we have a panel with different sectors represented and stakeholders. So Robin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Agustín, and my turn also to thank Ms. Kopczyńska. We've been exchanging in the past, and we've been great supporters of the great work that's already been done by the Commission. You've mentioned them all, and it's great to continue in that path together. So thanks for the actions. But I have to say, consumers always want more. That's why we're here. But not only us, MEPs always want more. Sector always wants more. So I'm happy to host this panel discussion where we're going to go a bit more into detail of the future of rail in Europe. I'm pleased to be joined by Ana Vasconcelos, MEP of the Renew Group, active in the ENVI and TRAN committee. I also have Elmer van Buren, which is the co-founder of European Sleeper night train services developing here across Europe. We also have Jérémy Pellerin, European Affairs Director and representative in Brussels of the SNCF group. And another of our own member, Margarita Moura, who is the Senior Legal Advisor of the Legal and Economic Department of DECO, the Portuguese Consumer Association. We have a good panel of Portuguese MEP and Portuguese Consumer Association and new entrants, incumbent operators. So it's going to be a lively debate, I'm sure. I'm going to start with you, MEP Vasconcelos. We know that in the parliament, there's a lot of supporters of rail. And now that you're entering this parliament with a new commission, the hearing of candidate commissioner Titi Costa is coming. I would like to hear your views as well of our report and what should be the priorities for the next commission. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to be here. I wasn't going to emphasize so much the fact that I'm from Portugal, but since it has been mentioned a few times, being from one of the most peripheral countries in Europe that is worse connected to the rest of Europe and actually very poorly connected to its only neighbor, land neighbor, is an additional motivation to be focused on rail, both from the TRAN and ENVI committee perspectives. So the first point I'd like to make is something that was emphasized by Ms. Kopczyńska, which is the political will that we have for these priorities concerning rail. So I think that two of the biggest priorities that this commission has and that we all have in this mandate, I think there's a large consensus on, are increasing economic competitiveness on the one hand, and also reaching our ambitious environmental standards. And we know that the transport sector is the second most second sector that is most responsible for carbon emissions. And we know that railway actually is the great exception in that regard, and nonetheless shares a very low percentage of modal share in the sector. So it is one of the utmost priorities to increase that modal share, to address the barriers to the attractiveness of this mode of transportation, to achieve the environmental standards that are one of the major priorities for this mandate. Now, I would like to also emphasize that I think that a lot of the challenges that the EU faces currently actually makes us emphasizes the need to go back to basics. And circulation is really one of the core foundations of the European Union. The four freedoms that are in our treaties that date back to 1957. So freedom of circulation of goods, people, capitals, and services. Just the two first, rail is a crucial, again, solution for. So again, one more reason to illustrate how political will is really there to address these priorities. So I think this is very clear in, I think this is very clear in the mission letter to now specifically address your question. And I think I detect a large convergence between the mission letter from the Commission and your report. So a lot has already been said, but in terms of ticket and cross-border travel, addressing the problems of fragmentation and making cross-border travel more user-friendly. Passenger rights, addressing the exemption barriers to really fully enforcing them, again, to make railway transport more attractive. High-speed and night trains, especially night traveling, also a priority. In focusing on investment in competition and having an investment plan. Now, of all of these, I would like to focus on competition, also emphasized in the previous intervention. There was a report that was recently published just last month, I believe, was a couple of weeks ago, by the Commission, stating that actually the increase in competition that we've seen in the rail sector has led to an increase in modal share, in part because of consumer satisfaction. So it has helped lower ticket fares, and it also has increased the quality of service. So we know that this is one of the feasible, effective ways of attaining our goals and making this mode of transportation more attractive. Now, a huge part of the challenge here, as has been overly stressed, but not in it's never too much to stress it, is addressing the problem of fragmentation. And for this, harmonizing legislation from 27 different jurisdictions is another concern that should be addressed, and of course offers several challenges to do with the different levels of governance here. But if this, at the end of the day, improves competitiveness, it really works for everyone. And so to that extent, we really just need to address the inertia. Nevertheless, making sure that harmonization and competition are not at odds. So harmonization works for competition, in the sense, if we think of it in terms of streamlining conflicting legislation, decluttering really legislation that or regulation at different levels that is not really serving any particular purpose anymore. It's there because of several how can I put it, legislative procedures at different levels, after successive mandates, different public contracts as well, create these bottlenecks that really are not safeguarding any concern of particular value that cannot be addressed by streamlining these regulations. And finally, obviously, simplifying. Now, this does not mean, again, for competition to be assured, there needs to be some level of autonomy at the national and local levels to make rail competitive as well, right? So we need to, and I think, address the resistance that you can meet from local and national powers by emphasizing how harmonization can work for them, and not take away the potential for competitiveness in the sector. So this, in a nutshell, is what I most wanted to address. I think competition is again, one of the approaches that have been proven successful. And again, the priorities mentioned in the report and in the mission letter, which converge, I think, go in that direction. And it again, political will is there. And I think that we have a great chance of addressing this, because it is one of the utmost conditions to addressing the priorities in this mandate. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Vasconcelos. I'll turn now to Margarida to compare a bit the two situations and what you learned also when contributing to BEUC's report, and also what would be the key priorities for rail to become a success, especially in Portugal.
Thank you. I'll try to respect the time. but I think that is almost as difficult as traveling by train from Portugal to Spain. So today we have just 2 rail connections from Portugal to Spain, the so-called Celta train that was already mentioned, from Porto to Vigo, and also a regional train from Entroncamento to Badajoz. So yes, we don't have any railway connection with Madrid, and icing on the cake, we have no connection. We have no night trains, so we have real incentives to fly. We had night trains till the pandemic, but we had the Lusitania train to Madrid, and we also had the Sud Express to Hendai, but they never run again since March 2020. But more serious than that, we have no good connections in terms of high-speed trains. Our high-speed train within the country, our high-speed train is Alfa Pendular, and we also can say that we have real high-speed trains, because these trains are not are marginally faster than the other ones, Intercidades, which is a long service distance train. For instance, between Lisbon and Algarve, which can say that is the between Lisbon and Faro, which we can say that is the capital of Algarve, a well-known tourist destination, which there even is an airport. We only have 2 connections per day, so we have not good connections between main cities. And about the speed, I can give you an example. For the Lisbon route Braga, Alfa Pendular is only 26 minutes faster than Intercidades, but with more or less connections and faster or slower trains, consumer need trains, and mainly in a country where we have only a company. We have another country, but it only operates suburban services in a residual niche market. So Portuguese people are constantly surprised by strikes. Only in the first semester of 2023 alone, CP was on strike for 98 days, which means more than half of the time. And the problem is that pass holders are not entitled on a right of compensation. According to the website of the Commission, Portugal is exempt from the application of the Article 19 of the regulation. So that means that in Portugal we apply the national application, and the national application, it's much more or less protective of consumers than the regulation. For instance, if we compare the national legislation with the regulation, for there to be the right to compensation. I'm talking about the pass holders. For there to be the right of compensation in the event of a delay or a cancellation, the operator or the infrastructure manager, the event must be attributable to the operator or to the infrastructure manager. And our legislation doesn't explain what is attributable, nor even as a list or some examples of what is included in that concept. But if we consult the terms and conditions of our company, CP, we can see that strikes are not included on the concept of attributable, so they are not attributable to the operator. And more, for pass holders to be compensated, they must prove that there are no viable alternatives for traveling covered by the pass, namely other modes of transport. So in practice, pass holders have no compensation in the event of a delay or a cancellation. So this is a big problem in Portugal. And what can consumers do when they face this situation and others that's I don't have time to explain now. They can complain, of course, but only if they feel the own specific form of CP. And I think that is not a minor problem, because we are talking about a basic right of consumers. And we always have taken for granted these basic rights of consumers. Do we have any consumer law that provides for these rights? I think that some of basic rights that we always taken for granted are being challenged, and I think that it's worth thinking about it.
Thank you, Margarida. Just for the sake of time, if we can pass on to the next speaker, so
yes,
we can go back.
Yes,
we can go back to
I'm going to pass to the next question. Measures. I think that the solution is a national railway plan. We also have a so-called national rail plan, but it wasn't really a plan. This was in the end of 2022 with our previous government. It was not a plan. It intended to be a plan. It was a document that made a proposal for an indicative period, proposal of a railway network for this indicative time, and also made a survey of the existing railway network at the time. It had no timelining, and it had no quantification in terms of the investment required at the time.
Right.
And
Margarida, I will have to cut you so that our other speaker also can intervene, and then we'll get back to you for the second round of questions. I'm going to pass on the floor to Jérémy Pellerin from SNCF. So you also have your very own manifesto for the new European elections. Please deep dive into it and tell us what would be the key priorities for you.
Thank you very much, Robin, and thank you to BEUC for the kind invitation today. There are lots of points that converge between BEUC's report and our manifesto. I would just note the need for modal shift to sustainable transport, the need for greater investment in railways, but also, of course, the need to put customers' expectations even more at the center of our reflection. So our key message for the new mandate is that rail should be put at the heart of the EU policies to decarbonize transport. This was not so much the case in the past legislature. And we would like the EU to have a clear objective to double the modal share of rail transport and rail freight transport by 2040. Because this will not only benefit the climate, it will also improve social cohesion throughout Europe. It will also improve the competitiveness of the continent. We believe that this objective can be reached if the right policies and the right financing means are put on the table. I would like just to mention one point that is not so present in the BEUC's manifesto, which is a level playing field between the different modes of transport. We believe we must make progress on that. And how can this be done? It's through the internalization of external costs. So climate change, environmental, social, economic costs, for the time being, they are borne by society. They are not integrated in the price of transport. So we believe it's really a game changer to go towards this direction of internalization of external costs. And it has three practical consequences if it's well done. First, the consumers can make an informed choice about the means of transport they choose. Secondly, the most sustainable modes of transport, including rail, will become cheaper and more competitive. And thirdly, the most polluting modes of transport will reduce their negative externalities. So it's all beneficial. Then you also mentioned strongly the need for more funding and for railways. This is absolutely key in our view. Without investments in infrastructure, the different networks in Europe will not be able to sustain a real modal shift. So this is for the future. But if we look also at the current situation now, more immediately, if we do not increase the funding to rail infrastructure in several member states, infrastructure will further deteriorate. And I'll take the example of France in this regard. With the current financing, we cannot slow down the aging of our network. So the average age is 35 years, but it's still increasing because there is not enough money to maintain and modernize the network. So it's really now that we must take action on funding. Otherwise, we have to put speed limits on some lines. We have to close some lines. So it's really an immediate problem. So we agree with BEUC that the priorities must be on the existing lines, on regional lines, on missing links, and the high-speed networks that we support. Of course, the idea of the high-speed network is the cherry on the cake, but it's not the first issue to tackle. I don't know if you will come back, Robin, to the funding later in the discussion.
Yes, I have one question specifically for you on that.
Okay, so I stop here.
Thank you, Jérémy, and great to hear the alignment. It doesn't happen so often that we always agree, so it's nice to see this baseline for strong policies. I'm going to pass on to Elmer van Buren, who's the founder of European Sleeper, this offering new night train services here in Europe with new lines opening soon. Please share your views with us. What would be the top priorities? How can we make your success story a long-lasting success story?
Yeah, thank you very much. I hope there's not too much background noise happening.
Sorry.
And thank you for the kind invitation. I want to be a little bit blunt and say, okay, I'm going to give you a bit of a reality check. This was a lot of theory, and the reality is a bit different. I'm currently in Barcelona. This is also the reason why there's so much background noise, because as a UN operator, you need to be a bit of a nomad. We don't have offices everywhere, so you need to sit in a bar to do your calls. We are operating a train through 4 countries at this moment, 3 times a week. 120,000 passengers have been transported in the last 1.5 years, and we're on the way to break even. That means without operating subsidies, it is possible to operate night trains. However, the reality is that even though I agree with the goals of the European Commission, because I think the European Commission is very ambitious and has the right ambitions as well, the single European railway area is not at all a reality, and it's not even close. We want to run competitive services. We want to run these in multiple countries, but the circumstances in which we do this are absolutely not present at the moment. We are in Barcelona at this moment because we want to run a service from Barcelona to Amsterdam, which runs through 4 countries and 5 infrastructure managers. And basically, to be able to do this, we need to align the timetable, because if we don't have a proper timetable, we don't have a product. And if we don't have a product, we can't sell tickets. And if we can't sell tickets, there cannot be any investment. Okay. The other thing is also that if you want to invest in rolling stock, it is not very cheap. We need a level playing field for the investment in rolling stock. And so I will move the microphone closer, hopefully it helps. We need to invest in rolling stock, and in order to invest in rolling stock, we need to de-risk the investment. For that, we need the help of the member states. So the problem that we have currently in Europe is not with the European Commission, it's not with the European Parliament, it's with the member states, who unfortunately do not want to prioritize investments, neither in the infrastructure nor in enabling new entrants. And also, they don't seem to have an interest in the opening of the market at all. So as long as we are opposing each other in that sense, I think there will not be a solution. What else can I say? Yeah, one way that also helps to generate revenue is to be able to buy your ticket on every possible platform. Unfortunately, it is primarily the main operators in Europe, like Deutsche Bahn, that prevent this, and they are owned by member states. So if we really want to be serious, I think there needs to be a shift in policy. There needs to be the availability of platforms to all operators. There needs to be more investment in all. I think that would be
Thank you, Elmer. I note down to summarize that the single European railway area is not a reality to you. You need the timetables, you need to be able to sell your tickets, you need a level playing field in investment, and of course you need for that the member states to participate in that ecosystem. Thank you. Can I pass back the floor to you, MEP Vasconcelos, maybe for reaction of what you heard in the different speeches already, but maybe also to focus on your competition angle and the investment needed, so that I can also lead back to Jeremy about these questions.
Thank you again. So again, I think that after especially we heard from Portugal, we see there the case of really there's not much confidence from the consumer in the railway service provided. There's no guarantee that if there's a delay, there will be there's no right to a compensation after a delay. Actually, our party nationally has proposed that would be the case. And it's because of the constant strikes. There are people, I mean, who's actually, aside from the low coverage of rail transport as an alternative to other modes of transport, aside from that, reliability on this mode of transportation is just not there. So it's really about increasing the quality of the service, the reliability of the service for consumers to be able to rely on it and to know when they can't that there are alternatives. As you see, for instance, in the aviation sector, I think a lot that happens in that sector should be emulated. I mean, if right now we want to decrease airway transport as an alternative and make railway transport more attractive comparatively, then a lot that has been done for airway travel to be more competitive. For instance, taking down language barriers for operators. English is a main language at that in international airlines, and with railway operators need to dominate the language of each country to be able to operate within it. So these are very basic aspects that create bottlenecks again for transport to be attractive for consumers in general and to be a viable alternative for consumers, both in their everyday commutes and for international travel. So again, it all comes down to making this alternative attractive. I think consumers, as also has been said here, are inclined to take this mode of transportation so long as it's reliable, affordable, and practical for their needs. And again, this is, I think, the good news here is that the political will is there, the sense of urgency is there. The awareness of the obstacles and what needs to be done to overcome them is there. Now we really need to, and so none of this means it's going to be easy, but it really is. I mean, in a lot of senses, many of the challenges that the EU faces have to do with harmonization, with deepening the single market, with making really, going back to basics and helping making sure that the aims of the European Union to begin with are again pursued, because there has been stagnation on that front for the past 20 years. So, and rail is crucial to this. So again, I think really the obstacle will be addressing fragmentation, will be addressing harmonization, and in a way that does not stifle competitiveness, because we've seen also in other sectors, the EU regulating in an attempt to make lives of European citizens easier in terms of harmonization, but sometimes that also conflicts with competitiveness, in the sense that you want pluralism, you want different alternatives for people to also have the power to choose what is most viable, and not to like freeze a sector at a certain in a certain framework that was conceived top down. So we always want to assure a certain degree of pluralism, of competition within the sector. But again, harmonization works to that end as well. And this is the balance we need to find.
Thank you. I note down the harmonization as a hammer word for you, and it's great to hear as well. Jeremy, I promised I was going back to you on the question of investment. Can I maybe link it to the comments from Elmer van Buren? What is this lack of level playing field, and you as a SNCF, how can you help maybe European Sleeper have a profitable business?
So those are two very different questions, but I start with the financing. The financing needs are huge. According to the TEN-T regulation parameters, we need to invest around 65 billion euros per year until 2050. And you know that the current Connecting Europe facility for transport for 7 years is only 25.8 billion. So that does not cover even half of what you need for 1 year. So in this situation, we must choose priorities, of course, and the priority, as I explained before, is infrastructure renewal, modernization. We talked about ERTMS, Ms. Kopczyńska as well. This is really a priority. The construction of the missing links, the urban nodes, and climate resilience, because we see that the rail infrastructure is more and more the victim of climate floods, and etc. So we need to increase the amount of the EU funding, but this is very difficult in the current context of public resources scarcity. So what we have tried to do is to reflect ourselves on the need to find new sources of financing. And what we believe is that the most polluting modes of transport should contribute. Some of the levies, part of the levies on those modes should be allocated to rail infrastructure and the decarbonization of transport. And I talked about the internalization of external costs is the same rationale. So concrete ideas are is earmarking of ETS revenues. So the carbon markets, there is money coming, and from 2027 we have the road transport ETS that will start. Secondly is road infrastructure charging. For the time being, so this is linked to the Eurovignette directive. For the time being, it's not really evenly implemented in the member states. If I take the example of France, the trucks do not pay for the use of infrastructure except when they are on toll motorways. So this is a very limited part of the road network, and then they pay even less their external costs. So we believe it should be worked on strongly. Also, when you look at aviation, there is no tax of kerosene, which is really crazy. This is a fossil fuel subsidy. And if we collect this money, we have the ability to invest in rail infrastructure. So this must be changed. To reply to your question from Elmer about how we can help. So this is the role of the infrastructure manager to really work together further and better to make sure that the pass allocation is done in the best way. And it's true that international pass allocation needs a strong improvement. And now we have the capacity regulation that is in discussion between the Parliament and the Council in trilogues. This is it can be really a game changer if the result of the negotiation is not too modest. We must stick to the ambition of the proposal of the Commission, and this is very important. And SNCF Réseau, as the French infrastructure manager, is really committed to better work of international pass allocation.
Thank you, Jeremy. Elmer, I'm giving you the floor, hoping the Barcelona quietness has now reached its possibility. please, for a reaction on Jeremy's comment. And on investment in general, of course.
Yeah, thank you. I agree that SNCF Réseau should give us a path. Unfortunately, they don't manage. There are only 30 routes to go to France, and so far they haven't managed to find a good one. That has to do indeed with the terrible state of the infrastructure, but also with the terrible way how the track works are managed. And I don't see any improvement on the short term there. So, and it's quite considerable length. With regards to investment, what we really need is investment in rolling stock. And if I see that there is potential for state incumbent operators to invest in rolling stock simply because they are owned by member states, and that means that they have more favorable conditions, I unfortunately have to conclude that for new entrants, there are not these favorable conditions. And that means that if we need to start competition, which we happily want to do, we need to get the level playing field, and the member states and the incumbent operators have the key to that, because there are already existing instruments like Eurovina that can help with this, but they are consciously hidden for new entrant operators that want to operate open access services. So yeah, I again, for me, this is really a reality check, and we really need to find solutions rather than. I'm also wondering, with regards to what Jeremy said, what the French state is doing in order to change the situation. You can look at European money, you can look at European solutions, but in fact, I believe that the French state and the French railway system does not have any interest or willingness to open the market and to change the status quo.
Thank you, Elmer. I note down the issues of the favorable conditions for rolling stock, which are also needed for new entrants, and not only for incumbents, the state of the infrastructure here especially in France, as you mentioned. Maybe I just want to tackle two other points. One that is actually mentioned in the chat, and one more on passenger rights. And Margarida, you've already explained the challenges faced by Portuguese consumers and how difficult it is to claim for compensation or to face or how they face issues when striking. What would be the solutions as part of the plan you mentioned, and maybe how the EU can really help in setting passenger rights better?
Thank you. So if you want that I continue to explain the problems of the National Railway Plan, or do you, yes?
Just your solutions and what should be done to make passenger rights effective. What would you suggest?
I will suggest that I was speaking about that our previous government had a national railway plan, and it wasn't a real plan, because it was a simple but important document that made a proposal for a network rail plan, a network rail for an indicative time of 27 years, 27 years, and it hasn't no quantification in terms of investments, and it has not any timetabling, and it has it had no references of essential issues like rolling stone. This is not a joke, it's true. And some other crucial issues like affordability, comfort conditions, stations, and other aspects that, in our perspective, are essentially in a national rail plan. This document was mainly focused on the infrastructure and on the speed that are obviously essential aspects, but not sufficient. And this document was never been approved. Made a survey of the existing railway network that existed at the time. It was a kind of an X-ray of the existing railway network, and it was never been approved. And I talk about this document because recently there was a legislative initiative to recommend the government to approve this document, and DECO supported this initiative, but we think that this document needs to be completed and improved, and it also needs to be discussed in the Portuguese Parliament, and it needs to be there's a need to have a consultation of the relevant association representing the relevant interest in question, and namely the Portuguese associations, in order to have the maximum consensus possible. And I would like to share, if it's possible.
Very shortly, Margareta, I'm going to give each speaker 1 last minute for a comment and taking one of the questions that we have. So 1 minute to conclude, so that we can finish the event on time for everyone.
Could you please share the last slide I have? of my presentation, just to see the picture that I had about the station, because I mentioned that the station is a crucial aspect to include in a national rail plan. I would like that you can see a station in the Alentejo line in Portugal. This is a station where the consumers wait in the sun and in the rain. They wait there for the train without no protection near this building of the 29th century that is completely without this building. The last works in this building were carried out 90 years ago, not 90 years ago. So welcome to the past. Thank you very much. And sorry for the time that I take.
Thank you. Thank you. Great example of the investment needed and where it should be. Jeremy, I'm getting back to you for a final word, and I'm taking the occasion to also ask the questions on ticketing. What is your view? I see that John Worth on the chat mentioned the fact that SNCF does not display the international rail travel. Maybe conclude on the ticketing aspect and a concluding words or call to action to the next commission.
Thank you, Robin. Just a quick correction to what Emma said about competition to reassure participants that SNCF is very serious about market opening, especially in open access. There have not been complaints to our regulator, not any complaints with this regard. And we believe really, as a group, we believe that there is space on the French network to, especially on some high-speed lines, to have new entrants, to offer new additional offers to the customers. And so Trenitalia and Renfe have entered the market. Renfe will also extend its place on the network. And we have very serious dossiers on the table also coming from different operators. So for sure this will develop in the next years. It's still at the beginning of the development an open access competition in France, but now the market is open. So it's really something we expect to grow in the next years and have a better and more frequent offer also on some lines for passengers. Regarding ticketing, just to react to John Worth's comment, indeed, we not deny it. We are in a bad situation in terms of international distribution at the moment, not only in France, but including in France. Of course, the idea is to go back to at least the situation we have, but even a better situation in terms of offer to the different customers. The situation is bad currently because the different systems, and this has been expressed by Ms. Vasconcelos, are not harmonized. So we don't have interoperable ticketing systems, and the commercial conditions also are not harmonized. So the sector has really decided to tackle the issue, has launched a ticketing roadmap that aims at harmonizing the systems, at harmonizing the commercial conditions. And that's, for example, for commercial conditions, the age limit for children booking horizon that was also in your manifesto. So it will improve, but it's an ongoing process. But in 2025, so next year, there are already strong deadlines that have been put in place, and with the implementation of the OSDM system across the different operators, it will certainly improve the situation. There has been also a strong commitment for passenger rights in parallel to the development of the EU legislation. This is the agreement on journey continuation. And the agreement on journey continuation allows passenger to hop on another train from the same operator if the disruption is due also to a different operator, not necessarily the same operator. So this is for international trips. So this is already a strong commitment from the sector. In terms of data sharing and ticket vendors, in France, SNCF Voyageurs is very open to the distribution by third parties. They are all treated in the same way, with the same level of real-time data that is shared to them. But this is not necessarily the silver bullet. First, we need this interoperability for ticketing, and we need also the distributors to be interested in selling the different connections. That's also why we are a bit cautious when the Commission announced, yes, we need to have single platform selling all connections, but actually, will the market want this? I'm not entirely sure that the market, the current distributors want this. For the time being, the platforms are rather cherry picking the connection where there are a lot of demand. So I'm not sure we will manage automatically to have the whole offers or all operators sold on a single platform, but this is a discussion we'll have in the next months.
Definitely, but great to hear from you. Elmer, I know you have to leave. If you want to drop in your last comment, and then we can circle back to MEP Vasconcelos to conclude.
Yeah, thank you. I will make it very short. And unfortunately, it's not really a comment that sounds like it's taking into account the consumer perspective, but actually it does, because if you want real challenge and if you want real innovation, if you really want something to change, you need competition. And actually competition is not coming from incumbent operators that are playing outside in the neighbor's garden with the taxpayers' money from their own country, like what we see in Spain, Italy, France. It's coming from new entrants. So the only way how to really challenge the status quo is to allow new entrants to do their thing. You see this in countries like the Czech Republic, and you also see this in countries like Italy, where Italo challenged quite well. So I think that this is really something we need to align the policy to make this happen. And as long as it doesn't happen, nothing will change. And also the whole ticketing thing will not change, because the ticketing is also one of the topics where unfortunately the incumbent operators do not want to move. They make it look like they want to move, but they don't want to. Unfortunately, we don't have time to discuss it more, but this is really something I needed to put in the arena. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see the differences between yourself and SNCF on this part, but also like what Jeremy said on the ambitions of the sector, which as you can be sure that we as consumer organization will also closely follow. I'll give the last word to MEP Vasconcelos to close up the debate, and then we will let everybody go to their occupation of the day. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll try to be brief. I've been looking at the questions, and I think again they all converge on the concern about how do we streamline legislation, how we address fragmentation without, again, stifling the incentives for competition that actually leads to consumer satisfaction, that create the incentives for consumer satisfaction. Because a stalemate in which the rail sector has been in most countries is really due to state ownership or state monopoly, really, of the service. So how we can make sure that from the legislator's point, our job is to remove obstacles, remove barriers to interoperability, to passenger rights, to make sure that, again, the consumer can rely on the service, its quality, in terms of both compensation and just simplicity in using the service and making sure it addresses their needs. That is really the main challenge here, because it's very easy to think of harmonization and just imposing a uniform framework that then again will create may solve the problem for the foreseeable future, but will create problems down the line again. And the stalemate that we see today, we may see down the line as well. And there's an additional factor that I actually haven't mentioned before, which is another crucial aspect for the goals to be attained in this domain is really investment. And we know that public investment is not sufficient, and we need to make this attractive for private investment as well. And for that, you need to see competitiveness, again, being viable for an expectation for consumer attractiveness to be there for the long term. So this has all to be factored in when we proceed in this mandate to finally make the single railway area a reality.
Thank you. Thank you for these concluding words, and thanks to the audience for listening to this debate. We will have the recording available online, and you will still be able to read our report on our website. As a concluding word, I would note down that we have the same baseline of making rail more attractive. How we get there might differ from operators to new entrants, from the Commission to the Parliament, but the ambition is clear. And that's a really great stuff to have. It's, as I said to Mr. Reyna, it does not always happen that everybody agrees on the goal. So let's strive to this goal. As BEUC, we will clearly focus and make rail a priority for the next 5 years, be it on ticketing, consumer rights, passenger rights, availability of rolling stock, and make sure that people can actually travel by train across Europe. I thank you all for attending the debate. I thank especially the panelists of today, and we'll surely see each other very soon. Thank you.